Welcome to Pallilo Points, World Series edition. I'm Brandon Strange, and the guy in the window to my left and your right is Charlie Pallilo, who you can hear weekdays 10 to noon on ESPN 97.5, 92.5, or anytime on demand on podcast. Charlie, man, we find ourselves spoiled getting to cover a third World Series in 5 years. And baseball especially, this run by the Astros has been one of the more impressive runs we've seen any team put together in this span. And poetically, if not ironically, after getting moved over to the AL, the Astros find themselves once again staring at an old NL rival and the Braves as their final boss in this 2021 revenge tour. So I want to start with the guys on the mound. How do you see these two pitching staffs matching up?
Well, sometimes you can pull that slice out of the toaster and, oh boy, you scrape off the burnt part and it's just fine. That was the Red Sox series, right? Framber was terrible, Garcia was terrible, but if you're only as good as your last time on the mound, well, they're Bob Gibson and Lefty Grove or something like that. So just as in the Red Sox series within a short series of games against the Braves, I mean, who really knows? 1 and 2 are even matchups. Astros fans are well familiar with Charlie Morton and postseason Charlie Morton. So he goes in game 1. He's not going to be fazed by the crowd here. No crowds in the postseason last year, minimal crowds in the postseason. But Charlie Morton in the pitching matchup dominated Lance McCullers in game 7 after the Astros had rallied from 0-3 down. So if you get Fenway Framber, hey, the Astros are in business. That he'll be that good again is unlikely, though the Braves lineup isn't as good overall as the Red Sox lineup. Luis Garcia, presuming he's your game 2 guy, as he should be, because he's been much better at home than on the road all season, coming off the performance of his life in the clincher on Friday. He'll have 4 days rest. Whatever they uncovered, Brent Strom and anyone else involved, to reposition his foot that jacked his velocity up 3 miles per hour on his fastball over anything that we've consistently seen before. I want him back on the home mound as soon as possible. The Braves go with a lefty in Max Fried, who is really good this year. Not a household name, maybe not even in his own household, but 14-7, and the pitching quality numbers to back it up. One interesting thing on Fried is he actually fared better against righties than lefties this year. So Brantley and Jordan and Tucker. I'm guessing that Dusty will stick with Brantley even against the lefty starter, given that fact. I think those matchups are a push, as is Jose Urquidy, if Urquidy is right anyway, against Ian Anderson in Game 3, full-time, young, really gifted starter for the Braves. And then both teams are in grab bag mode in Game 4. I think the Braves more solidly know we're going with Drew Smyly, another lefty, whereas the Astros will probably go Zach Greinke and should have someone warming up with Greinke in the bullpen before the game. But in terms of the big picture starting pitching, I think it's a pretty even-Steven match, Astros and Braves.
You mentioned a couple of guys, or you mentioned one guy in particular that I want to talk about, which is Jose Urquidy. We have not seen much from him. We have seen a little bit from Christian Javier, and what we've seen out of Christian looks very, very promising. How do you think those two guys in particular are going to be used in this series?
Well, if you run into trouble in either games 1 or 2, but you're not being blown out, Javier is good for one multi-inning relief outing. So let's say Framber only goes 3 1/3, but you're down 4-2 when he's out of the game. I would think Javier is the guy there. But if you use him game 1, multi-innings, well, you're not coming back the next night with him. Then you get an off day before game 3. If you don't use him in game 1, you have him available in game 2, then you have the off day. How much workload could he handle, say, twice within 3 days? You do have off days after game 2, and if the series extends after game 5. I think Jake Odorizzi's probably been removed from the equation unless it's a lopsided game. But really, at home, Framber and Garcia, even though the Red Sox clobbered both the first time out, I think it's reasonable expectation. They're going to give you at least, say, 5 innings. So then does Dusty want to go to Javier as that bridge, shortening the bridge down? Or, hey, I got good work out of Maton, and Stanek seems to be on his game, as opposed to going a multi-inning guy before you get to Graveman and Presley late.
Okay, let's switch over to the offense. This looks like a battle of the two hottest offensive players in Yordan Alvarez versus Eddie Rosario. But beyond that, these are two offenses that can get it done. Who do you give the edge to in this series? It sounds like Houston, but I want to hear your thoughts.
It's Houston. The Astros have the better, deeper lineup. And again, it's a matter of sample size. Eddie Rosario's been a nice player. He was real good after the acquisition at the trade deadline. And he turned into a freaking monster in the league championship series. Is he going to sustain? Or, you know what? Spigots get turned off, whether it's new batch of games, different batch of pitchers. Right? Kike Hernandez had been destroying the world into the Astro series, and then suddenly, last 2-3 games, like the entire Red Sox offense. But overall pedigree and depth, clear advantage Astros. You go individually on the corners. Yuli Gurriel had a real good year. No team other than the Astros will always stick with our own guys. No team's going to take Gurriel over Freddie Freeman. The last 2 years, Austin Riley's been a better player than Alex Bregman. But Alex Bregman also has October and World Series bona fides. But I think you go 1 through 9 in the lineup, or the games in Atlanta, 1 through 8, and the pitcher spot. The Astros have the better offense. So if both teams perform to the same degree of potential, the Astros should score more runs.
Okay, but you mentioned on something that I think is important, which is that pitcher spot. They're going to have to go to Atlanta, and they're going to have to navigate that pitcher spot. And yet they've got guys, that they DH here in Jordan and Brantley. How do you see them navigating? Are we going to see both Jordan and Brantley in the outfield?
I think in Game 3, Tucker will play center field. They'll be facing the right-handed starter, Ian Anderson. So left field DH, whichever you would switch them during the season. Well, Brantley goes to right field. Jordan obviously is only going to play left field. McCormick or Series sits. Game 4 is your decision, facing the lefty. If there's a play in the outfield with Tucker in center, who is not the center fielder, that he is the right fielder. Obviously, their overall defense is better when it's McCormick or maybe even Siri in center. Against the lefty, Brantley didn't hit lefties all year. Did have a couple of hits against the Red Sox, particularly Martin Perez, who's a lousy left-handed pitcher. But I think unless they run into a calamity in the outfield, Dusty's going to be inclined to go Jordan left, Tucker center, Brantley right.
Umpires have been a big story this postseason. We saw the NLDS check swing called a strike in the Giants season. In the ALDS, there was the Garcia strike that was called a ball that led to a big inning. In the ALCS, there was the ball that could have been called a strike on Castro that allowed him to untie the game late. It was interesting here that there are no umps assigned to this World Series that are in the top 20% of accuracy. 4 are well below average. Ron Kulpa is statistically the 3rd worst umpire in the league. Astros fans will remember him. They have a history. How do you see umpiring playing into this series?
To some, that's Ron Culpable. The strength of the union. You'd like it to be a pure merit system that you take the 7 best umpires, right, 6 and an alternate or 2 alternates, whatever you want to go with, and that's what you go with, especially when every game, home plate umpire in particular, every game's evaluated and graded. It's just not the way they do it, but hey, no Las Diaz, hey, no Angel Hernandez. The question is there a disproportionate percentage of bad calls one way or the other? Right? The Astros had a couple that they could say, oh my goodness. Well, so could the Red Sox. So at what point in the game, where do you say, oh, that call pivoted the game? Right, Evaldi's pitch to Castro, yeah, it was a strike. But it wasn't a strike right down the heart of the plate. It's a pitch that it doesn't make it right, that it can be missed by umpires a little higher percentage of the time than some other pitchers. It also didn't mandate that Evaldi then left a pitch in his zone or dictate that Castro was going to line it for the base hit. So human error, I am not a believer that, well, it's just a part of the game where law and order is concerned. Their job is to get everything right. And while no one can expect 100%, it's why I'm for getting us to robot umpiring, because human error is when a shortstop kicks a ground ball or a base running mistake is made. It's not supposed to be when black and white, ball or strike, safe or out, and the umpire gums it up and you don't have a replay mechanism to fix it.
Amen. And then lastly, it seems like the national media have finally, I think, kind of reconciled the Astros and the cheating scandal from 2017. I think a lot of them either tired of talking about it or have come around to the fact of, hey, the Astros are just good. Should the Astros close the deal in this series and bring home a second championship in 5 years, What will that do to kind of reconcile, if not validate, what they did in 2017? I know the black mark's never going to go away, but what does this do to validate 2017?
Yeah. Out damn spot, right? The spot will never come out, but it does not rend the entire garment as trash. Look, they did it. They were caught. If we're all driving 68 on the freeway in a 65 and you get caught for the ticket, that's how it goes. But any idea that the Astros were built on the system and that it was smoke and mirrors or completely delegitimized, that's just silliness. If you are an Astros fan and 4 years after the fact, whether it's New York, LA, Boston, anywhere else, and people are still so miserable or irate over that, I wouldn't say take pity on them, but have a chuckle at their expense. There really is no reason for an Astros fan to be bothered retroactively at this point, and there can be zero legitimate questions, I guess, about anything that the 2019 Astros have achieved this close to winning the World Series, and now 2021, where they were going to win this World Series in 5.